right. Hello again. Hello again. I just want to comment. You may have noticed I've been a little bit quiet on the channel lately. We've been working on some things behind the scenes. First and foremost, I'm working on the next webinar, which will be November 6th. I will be sending out the link to that very, very soon, probably as early as tomorrow. I didn't have it ready for tonight's show. I'll come on and do probably a special 2-3 minute talk and share that webinar. We'll be talking about insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. I'll also be answering your COVID-19 questions. There will only be one webinar, and seats will be limited. So sign up as soon as you can, as soon as we get that link out, which will likely be tomorrow. And so I see my friend and colleague, Dr. Ford Atkins is on. Hello, Dr. Atkins. How are you doing?
I'm good. Doing fine today. How are you?
Just fine, just fine. So just getting on with the group. We're going to talk about mitochondrial health and COVID-19. I'm going to focus on exercise and effects of exercise on mitochondrial health. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about food. So we're going to bring these two topics together, fitness and food, and essentially put together some of the nuances of the fitness and food factor. So without further ado, I want to say hello to Catherine Welch, Deborah Payne, JW, Miss Johnson. Hello, thanks for coming on so early. So what is this whole issue with mitochondrial health and COVID-19? Well, first of all, mitochondria, what's that? Most people don't think about mitochondria. A lot of people are. Some of my patients ask questions about mitochondria. So the best way to describe mitochondria is to talk about what it does. So this simple slide. And by the way, I've shared there are a couple of articles I'm going to read through with you. So most of this presentation will be text pulled from a couple of articles. One is a review. The other is an editorial, and they go over some of the basics of what I'll be talking about. And you have in the link below, you have the links to digital links to both of these articles. The third article I'll discuss, you won't have a link to it, but you'll have the title in the slide, so you can be able to pull the information from the title. But anyway, function of the mitochondria. Mitochondria are important organelles of the cells. On all the organelles are important, but mitochondria are particularly important. I do recall reading and also hearing in some lectures that it's been proposed that mitochondria are like bacteria-like organisms that were overtaken by cells. Now, we know that our body lives in symbiosis of microbes. And so our microbiome, gut flora consists of bacteria, viruses, fungi, et cetera, and they live in it's an ecosystem. So, this ecosystem probably existed, from our creation, and probably part of that, part of the ecosystem was, mitochondria, which are, bacteria-like organelles. And so they do a lot for the cells. But anyway, what are mitochondria? What do they do? Well, they produce ATP. Many of you may remember from your high school, college biology classes, these are the powerhouses of the cell. They produce ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and this is the energy currency. Any kind of cellular activity or chemical reactions that take place, often require ATP. Even the cell membranes, your cell membranes maintain a certain charge, and maintaining that charge of polarity, if you will, keeping, say, the negative charge on the inside and the positive charge on the outside, maintaining that differential polarity, which keeps the cell alive, requires energy. So that the energy currency that maintains, the polarity, because the natural tendency is for the charges to mix equally, but it has to maintain more negative on one side versus positive on the other side. And ATP is a constant energy expenditure that maintains that polarity. It helps regulate the immune system, which is going to be really, really important to what we're talking about today. Calcium balance is important. Also, cell death and renewal is important. So we have certain cells as a turnover. Body has to renew itself. And so it contributes to the process of, killing cells that are worn out and renewing cells. Also, stem cell regulation. These are brand new cells or undifferentiated cells, and they can be regulated because, if they, are not regulated, then you can have, the development of cancer cells or the like, or over generation of cells, whether they're normal or abnormal. So mitochondria has an important role to play in terms of normal physiology, normal biological maintenance, energy maintenance, immunity, etc. And these top two are very important because these are very important roles that need to be played in overall health. So what can go wrong? The mitochondria, as we know, is a powerhouse, but it can also degenerate under pathological conditions. Dysfunctional mitochondria can become a death engine. So what can lead to the transition of the mitochondria from powerhouse to death engine? Well, excuse the business of the slide. I highlighted some of the key parts, but mitochondria is known as a powerhouse. It produces ATP. It also produces heat in specialized cells. These are brown fat cells. So in certain fat cells, it produces heat. And so that's on the beneficial side. There's intermediate metabolism. Mitochondria produces metabolites for biosynthesis, protein modification, signal transduction. This is just fancy jargon for it produces substances, metabolites. These are cellular components that allow for protein modification, which is the building process. Signal transduction, this is how the cells communicate with each other, and other forms of biosynthesis or biological development. In other words, this part of the machinery of what your body uses to manufacture things that the body needs. Also, it's part of the machinery to produce things that what your body needs to communicate with from cell to cell, tissue to tissue, organ to organ, etc. Now, oxidative phosphorylation, that's just a fancy phrase, means that when you breathe in oxygen, and many of you may remember studying the Krebs cycle when you were in maybe high school or college or whenever we first heard about the Krebs cycle. But all oxidative phosphorylation means is that oxygen goes into the cell and through a biochemical process leads to the production of ATP. In other words, it leads to attachment of a phosphorus molecule to adenosine diphosphate, making adenosine triphosphate or ATP, or phosphate to adenosine monophosphate, making a diphosphate, and putting another one, making a triphosphate. All that's fancy jargon for you breathe in oxygen and you get energy currency inside your cell. Taking a breath equals energy. That's oxidative phosphorylation. If you uncouple that, then you have to breathe in more, take in more oxygen to create a certain amount of ATP. So let's say, for instance, if your body's working very efficiently, maybe you take in one breath, and that one breath gives you, say, $100 worth of ATP. But let's say your body's not working efficiently, and you take in one breath, instead of $100 worth of ATP, you only get $50 of ATP. Well, guess what? You got to get that $100 worth of ATP. So if there's a relative uncoupling, when I say uncoupling, there's a disconnect between the amount of oxygen you bring in and the amount of ATP you get, then you have to breathe harder, i.e. bring in more oxygen to get more ATP. And so you can imagine that if you're out of shape versus if you're in shape. So someone is very physiologically in shape and in good condition, have a very efficient oxidative phosphorylation, meaning that each breath gives you more ATP compared to if you're out of shape, each breath gives you less ATP, so you need to breathe harder. So that may be one little thing that I'm trying to help you understand oxidative phosphorylation from a real life perspective. So oxidative phosphorylation is coupled with generation of reactive oxygen species. What that means is these are toxins. Remember, we talked about reactive oxygen species before. We can also refer to them as free radicals. They have unpaired electrons. Essentially, just think of them as toxins. You need antioxidants to stabilize them. You need a certain number of these quote unquote toxins. Your immune system uses it to fight off, pathogens like bacteria and viruses, but you don't need too much of it. So you need a balance between these reactive oxygen species, i.e. toxins, and what we call antioxidants. That's why you eat a healthy diet. So it can either serve as molecular signals or cause cell damage and cell death. If it causes cell damage, cell death, again, your immune system can kill cells. We call them natural killer cells, and they have an important role. They need to have, these are like bullets. Think of these toxins like bullets. And so you need to create certain reactive oxygen species, i.e. toxins, i.e. bullets, so that you can kill cells. Cells may be pathogens, bacteria, viruses coming in, you shoot them down. Or it can be a cell that goes bad. You have your normal cells that weaken and deteriorate, and they need to be killed, like a horse with a broken leg. Got to shoot it. And so you have to shoot your cells sometimes if they're gone bad. What if a cell gets overtaken by a virus? Well, if the cell gets overtaken by a virus, i.e. COVID-19, that virus takes over the cell and forces that cell to make abnormal molecules, proteins, and it forces that cell to make more viruses. Well, guess what? That cell has become a traitor. We need to need to kill the cell. So the reactive oxygen species can have a positive role, but if you have too many of them, then they can also start to float around and kill normal, healthy cells. And that's what leads to chronic illnesses. So excessive reactive oxygen species are toxic chemicals, are associated with increased what we call oxidative stress, which is associated with increased cell death and chronic illness. So I'm trying to put all this in perspective for you as we start to talk about what mitochondria does and so on. So mitochondrial metabolism stimulated by calcium. So calcium overload can trigger release of mitochondrial contents such as cytochrome C. It induces apoptosis. Apoptosis just means cell death or loss of membrane potential, causing ATP deprivation and necrosis. So in other words, the mitochondrial membrane itself wears out. It cannot produce ATP or energy, and it starts to develop, starts to become necrotic and die. Because again, the cell membrane needs ATP, and if the cell membrane is not intact, then the mitochondria starts to die. And as the mitochondria dies, the cellular function becomes impaired, and you get cellular death or cellular dysfunction. And this can happen outside of any viral infection. It can happen by itself. And so we're going to talk about some things that impair mitochondrial function, as well as things that enhance mitochondrial function. So what we're talking about now is, well, okay, what happens when a mitochondria gets sick and start to die? These are the things that start to happen. You don't produce enough energy, then the cell itself becomes dysfunctional, and it can lead to cell death. Leakage of damage-associated materials, such as mitochondrial DNA, peptides, or excess reactive oxygen species, which is inside mitochondria, causes inflammation. This is probably a mechanism of heart failure and diabetes. So when the mitochondria dies, it leaks content, and these contents roam around in the cell, and it triggers inflammation, which leads to more intracellular damage. So the transition of the mitochondria from a powerhouse to a death engine is the key to pathogenesis and many chronic illnesses such as heart failure. So when the mitochondria dies, a healthy mitochondria is a powerhouse. It creates energy, and it does a lot of positive things for the cell. An unhealthy, dysfunctional mitochondria becomes a death cell that leads to cell dysfunction, low energy, and eventually cell death. That's what I want you to sell. Healthy mitochondria, powerhouse, more energy, healthy immune system, weak mitochondria, weak cell, less energy, and cell death. Here's a diagram that kind of outlines that. That helps make up for that ugly, busy slides that I had. But I want to give you some of the nuts and bolts. You can go back and look at it, the details later. So mitochondrial dysfunction, pathophysiology of heart failure. This could be any chronic illness, but on the functional side, as I said, ATP production, growth and adaptation. So protein modification, myocardial nuclear communication, mitochondria to nuclear communication. In other words, it's carrying on the business of cellular function. Biosynthesis and production of substances, creation of energy. Immune system is not put here, but in other cells, you can imagine it has immune functions like mitochondria within the endothelial cells of the lung, tissue, of the gut. Gut lining cells would be a very important role for immune function, also in the heart as well. But calcium transport, so you start to have excess metabolic stimulation. excess stress, calcium homeostasis, reactive oxygen stress. If these things overflows, there's a balance you have to maintain. If it overflows into the dysfunctional side, then you get inflammation and increased cell death. And so that's what happens inside the mitochondria. And that leads to, if you have enough mitochondria that are dysfunctional within the cell, then you'll have essentially cellular death and, of course, impaired immune system. So I pulled a couple of articles where they looked at some of the detailed mechanisms. And this is the title. You have the link to this article. Where they looked at low cardiorespiratory and myocardial fitness as risk factors for viral infections with the implications for COVID-19. Essentially, and I apologize, this is a busy slide, but I just wanted to highlight some components in case some of you pull the article and go over it. So as we talked about, mitochondria are cellular powerhouses that generate the generators and regulators of metabolism and are critically involved in antiviral host response. They have on it that an important component is a mitochondrial antiviral signaling complex. So they have an antiviral signaling complex right on their membrane. It's on the outer part of the membrane, and this signaling complex gets activated by a family of pathogen-directing receptors. They're receptors that alert the mitochondria, alert the cell that, hey, viruses may be coming. This induces a response that includes certain molecules like interferons, and they're central to cellular defense. So the mitochondria gets alerted. There's an alert system. Somebody's on the lookout. Hey, there's viruses that communicate with the mitochondria, and the mitochondria start to create molecules like interferon that helps with cellular defense. Now, there's some viruses that evolve mechanisms that evade the signaling signal, and they can bypass that efficiency. But the point is simply this. They understand clearly how mitochondria, healthy mitochondria, play an important role in viral defense. And therefore, that's one direct mechanism of how mitochondria can help with the immune system. So what can cause, so we made the argument that mitochondria is important for cellular function and important for immune defense, particularly against viruses. So what causes mitochondrial dysfunction? Well, a lot of things could cause mitochondrial dysfunction. One thing we want to focus on here is the lack of exercise. So if you look at this diagram, which is from that other article, as you probably saw it earlier, regular exercise and regular fitness has a negative component on mitochondrial dysfunction. So in other words, exercise prevents mitochondrial dysfunction. It also prevents oxidative stress. It also decreases inflammation. But older age potentiates dysfunction of the mitochondria. It potentiates inflammation, and it potentiates oxidative stress, which all contribute to mitochondrial dysfunction, which all predispose to your risk of any viral infection, particularly COVID-19, but the flu or any kind of infection whatsoever. For mitochondrial dysfunction is important, and exercise is a simple way to do that. Here's another article where they looked at the central role of mitochondrial fitness in antiviral diseases. Essentially, on their analysis, they saw it enhance mitochondrial production function is enhanced by physical activity, including exercise, and increase the integrity, efficiency, and dynamic adaptation to stresses. And in short, it leads to mitochondrial fitness. So basically, high mitochondrial fitness should be considered as protective factors in viral infections, including that of COVID-19. So whether it's the flu or any other viral infection, you want healthy mitochondria. This is a complex slide. Essentially, what I want to show you here in a diagrammatic format is how the mitochondria improves. So mitochondrial biogenesis means it replicates, you get more mitochondria. And there are certain supplements that you can take that improves mitochondrial function. Mitochondria can fuse together to make larger mitochondria, improve effectiveness there. Mitochondria can signal cell death by releasing its content. We talked about that before. Its membrane becomes permeable and some of the contents leak from the mitochondria inside. You can have inefficient mitochondria that gets destroyed. So death of the mitochondria is important. But you can also have fission of a healthy and an inefficient mitochondria, and it can be resuscitated by just fusing with a healthier mitochondria. So there are different ways that the mitochondria can improve its overall effect here. And here you see the diagram. This alert molecule function sends signal to the mitochondrial antiviral signaling complex, and it triggers a number of biochemical reactions that alerts the immune system, including production of ATP and other things that enhances immune function, such as production of reactive oxygen species that can be used to kill certain cells, viruses, or bacteria, and the like. This is a nice simple diagram that goes into how different activity levels have an impact on mitochondrial health. So sitting sedentary like I'm doing right now, I'm decreasing my mitochondrial biogenesis and content. I could be decreasing my energy of oxphos and therefore ATP production, decrease in antioxidative defense mechanism, which is reactive oxygen species, can decrease in mitochondrial dynamics, meaning that decrease in efficiency in which mitochondria can fuse and improve dysfunctional mitochondria by the fission of a healthy mitochondria. And then quality control. So this mitochondria is dysfunctional. I'm not going to be efficient in terms of destroying poor quality mitochondria by sitting still. So poor quality control, that goes down. So what improves it? So chronic exercise improves all of these things at different tissue levels in the brain, muscle, lungs, this oxphos production, kidney, brain, lungs, liver, heart, muscle. So it shows how mitochondrial function improves all across the board in different tissues, skeletal muscles all across the board, brain and kidneys as related to antioxidative defense mechanisms, as well as the heart. And so these things improve significantly with chronic exercise and moderate intensity, so chronic and lifelong. If you look at acute chronic activity, all of these things are favorable with the exception of oxidative defense. So you have a decrease in antioxidant defense mechanism, and that might be a reason why you don't exercise in the setting of an acute viral infection. So you get a transient decrease in your antioxidant defense mechanism, which predisposes you to, say, maybe a worsening of an infection. So we often tell our patients not to exercise during the acute phase of a viral infection or bacterial infection or the like. So again, a bit of a technical discussion. I know, some people may not have grabbed that too much. I try to break it down as much as possible, but I want you to really understand how the body works in the context of these disease states, but also in the context of health. It's not enough to say, oh, just exercise more. Well, okay, that's good, but what does it mean? How do I know that? I want to show you some evidence based on the science. Everyone's talking about follow the science, so we want to talk about the science, but I want to talk about it from an evidence base. I want to just give you some theory, say, okay, do this and it's healthy, but then the biology and the biochemistry don't match the recommendation. So if I say, oh, go exercise, get out fresh air and sunshine during the pandemic, and other experts are saying, no, stay in the house and hide, then I'm going to say, well, my recommendation is based on scientific evidence, based on the biology and the biochemical mechanisms. And that's important from the standpoint of saying, wait a minute, he's telling me to exercise. Why is he telling me that? And somebody else is telling me, well, stay in the house and hide. And which is best? Well, I'm going to say this is what my argument is based on: fresh air and sunshine, regular exercise. It has beneficial effects, not only from the standpoint of, well, I'm going to lose a few pounds or, build up some muscle, but it actually has biochemical and physiological effects. And we're showing you here at the cellular level how exercise enhances your body's immune system and enhances your ability to fight off a viral infection. So this is how it works, and this is what that information is based on. So, there's a little bit of technical discussion here, but I think there's an important aspect of it, and feel free to answer those questions. Greetings, I'm Dr. Batcher Montgomery. Thanks for joining us this evening. I want to share information about our FoodRx Healthy Lifestyle Series. The FoodRx Healthy Lifestyle Series is a comprehensive health and wellness coaching program designed to help you navigate your lifestyle towards optimal health. Do you want to reverse or control a chronic illness, or reduce or eliminate medications? You may want to avoid potential surgeries or medical procedures, or perhaps boost your immune system or improve your fitness level, or much more. The program starts with an intense 5-session, 4-week virtual coaching jumpstart phase, where you join a group of like-minded individuals dedicated to improving their health. You'll be provided a lot of support materials, including nutrition plans, recipes, supplement plans as needed, or fitness plans, and much more. You have full-year access to the support materials as well as our health and wellness team during and at the completion of the 4-week jumpstart period. To learn more about this program, connect on one of our links below or schedule a call with our team members. Let them know if you wish to speak to me directly, and they'll arrange a time for you. Optimal health is a lifelong journey. Let us help you navigate it to your most desired destination.